Hello, welcome to Simple Life Philosophy, and I'm your host, Ed Raby. This is the channel where you can follow along with me on my journey to find a simpler philosophy of life that is both easy to understand and easy to execute. This channel is devoted to me trying to find a way to have a simpler life that is more productive because it is simpler. Today, like and share the video. Do what you guys do on YouTube because it's gonna, keep growing the channel. You are what makes this channel possible and what makes it continue to grow. Thank you. Today I'm going to be beginning in Stoic Viking meditations here. These Stoic Viking meditations is about giving you a little bit of an encouragement, a little bit of something to think upon. Basically by listening to these, I hope that you maybe get some encouragement for the day, maybe some thoughts to think about, and maybe some calmness and peace in your life. I used to make my life as my living as a minister, and now I don't do that anymore. But a lot of what I did was simply coaching people through life with some wisdom and some philosophy and helping people find their way in a very difficult and challenging and sometimes complex world. Today I'm beginning the series on the 9 Noble Virtues. Sometimes this is known as the 9 Noble Virtues of Asatru. Sometimes it's known as something else. But the 9 Noble Virtues, I have found them, I found them in just about every walk of life. Somewhere, someplace, there's the 9 Noble Virtues. And today I want to begin with the virtue of courage. Courage is defined by the 9 Noble Virtues as basically, when we talk about courage, the oath behind it is, I will face my fears and defend my family and kindred against all dangers. Let's break that down a little bit. I will face my fear. Courage is sometimes portrayed as not necessarily the absence of fear, but rather a choice to look at fear and have fears, but do what is needed and right to do, which kind of leads into discipline, the next 9 Noble Virtue. But it's in that view of fear and courage, they are both present in a person, but courage overcomes the fear. The fear is there. Other people look at fear as unreal, that it's a response to danger, basically. The danger is present and the danger is very real. But at that moment, we can either flee, which is a flight reflex, or we can fight it. And that's kind of where courage comes in. Courage more leans us towards fighting the fear rather than, going down the fear path. Courage says, yes, the danger is real. Yes, my temptation here is to be afraid, but I will not be afraid and I will be courageous, thus creating courage as a definition with the absence of fear. But in the 9 Noble Virtues, it says, I will face my fear. It doesn't really give us either definition or either way of looking at courage or fear. It simply says, I possess fear and I will face it. This broadens the scope of the virtue. Remember, virtues are things that are always good. They are always virtuous, regardless of how many different ways we look at them. In this case, courage is always looked as beneficial as opposed to cowardice. Cowardice is never looked at as beneficial. Now, some might argue that some actions take bravery, like retreating from a bad situation to fight another day. I'm not arguing about that. I'm not talking about getting out of a bad situation. If you're in an abusive relationship, the time to get out is usually at that moment, and it takes courage to get out of that situation. Courage has a flexibility to it. The issue is, what are you using it for? What fear are you trying to face? And a lot of people stay in bad situations because they're afraid that by changing, things will get worse. The thing is, without change, things aren't going to get better either. Courage faces change, and fear usually is the result of our own ignorance about the future, our own ignorance about the situation. So one of the main ways to act in courage is just to inform oneself, to get some sort of better understanding of the problem and the way things are. Another thing that you can do to be courageous is not just inform yourself, but make that decision that you're not going to let fear rule you, but rather that you go forward in what is best for you and best for your family and, yes, your kindred. Um, when I ask people about, well, people have talked to me because I have a political science degree. They ask me questions about power dynamics every once in a while. Well, a power dynamic is very simple. If you want to know who has power over who, just figure out who's afraid. Whoever's afraid is not the one in power. The person who is unafraid is the one in power. So if you see a situation where basically, usually it's very complex where one person has fears in a certain situation and the other person has a fear in a different situation. But if one person is always afraid of the other person, then the person that is invoking the fear has the power. And this creates a lot of interesting things with power dynamics, because when you begin to look at life and society in general, you begin to find out who really has the power. What exactly are different groups and people afraid of? And whoever they're afraid of, that person has power over them. The idea of courage is taking back one's power so that one is not under the power of anybody else. It is the first step to freedom, is courage, and saying, I will be free. I will do as is best for me. I am in charge of my life. I will face my fears, and I will take my power back. That is what it means to have courage. Now, the other part of this virtue talks about defense of one's family and one's kindred against all dangers. There's a purpose to courage. It's not just self-centered. Sure, the battle is within ourselves, and we will benefit ourselves. But in the end, you also have to do something called look outwardly as to how this virtue benefits others. All virtues, in addition to always being good in their outcome, also have a tendency not only to benefit the self, but also benefit others around us. Courage benefits other people around us because it causes us to take action to defend them. We defend our families, we defend our kindred. I would probably add my friends, because I have a couple of friends that I would consider to be better than family in some respects. And so that definition of kindred is often lost to us, but it's usually about extended family, the clan. But I think your clan these days probably can be your extended friends, the people that you hold close, regardless of whether your DNA is mingled with their DNA. One of my favorite quotes is, I don't care whose DNA has mingled with whose DNA. What matters is when the chips are down and that person's there, they're family. And I agree with that definition of family. I think given all the convoluted statements about family, the truest families are the ones that have the courage to stand with you when times are tough. Courage then becomes the litmus test of whether or not somebody is truly your kindred or your family. When the chips are down, who's standing next to you? When the chips are down for somebody else that you care about, are you standing next to them? Because courage should have an action, which is we defend each other that we care about. Okay, if you care about somebody that you consider them family or kindred, courage should draw you to their defense, not to your own self-preservation. Self-preservation sounds like it's beneficial, but it isn't really. It may lead to short-term survival, but it will not lead to long-term survival or even prosperity. A person who is a coward is untrustworthy, and even if they survive the battle, after the battle, people don't trust a coward. They know that that person will eventually side with themselves, and you can't build an ordered society on that at all. This is called the Stoic Viking for a reason, too, and I feel it's very fitting to start with courage as we launch the Stoic Viking series. In that one of the virtues of Stoicism is courage. It's interesting that a lot of the other virtues don't have a direct correlation other than, self-control, but the only other one that's a direct correlation to the 9 noble virtues is courage. It is perhaps interesting that the Stoics recognized that one having moral courage and moral fiber is absolutely necessary to living an ethical and simple life. And that is why courage becomes one of the cornerstones of their philosophy, one of the 4 virtues that they follow. And here in the 9 noble virtues, it is the first virtue. Because in reality, without courage, is any other virtue possible? It's a good question. And I'll leave you with that question. Maybe you can answer it in the comments. Is there a value to any other virtue without the courage to act in virtue? Perhaps courage is the doorway to all other virtues, especially itself. I want to thank you for stopping by. This has been Stoic Viking Meditations, a production of Simple Life Philosophy, and I've been your host, Ed Raby. I want to thank you for stopping by. Make sure you like or share the video. Make sure you comment below. I always welcome comments. I'm always interested in hearing what people have to think and their ideas for a simpler life philosophy, many of which I want to follow myself. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and get your notification bell turned on so whenever I drop a new video, you'll be one of the first people to see it. I want to thank you once again for stopping by. This has been Simple Life Philosophy and Stoic Viking Meditations in particular. And I want to thank you for stopping by once again. And I've been your host, Ed Raby, and I would appreciate you all every day. Now go forward with a little bit of courage today, and I hope you have a good one.